share a little bit about what we're doing with Results Washington and our journey with performance management and lead management. And I've been in the private sector, as you can see from the bio in the past. I've been at the Boeings and the Virginia Masons, and then moved over to government to see how can we apply this in a way that makes sense and actually do the work that needs to be done, as Harvey mentioned. Lots to be done.
Lots to be done.
So we want to share with you our journey and get a sense from you in terms of what questions you might have for us. So when you heard about the work that Henry's doing in Virginia Mason, we used kind of a behavior change scale. I don't know if you've heard about it with trans-theoretical model. Are you thinking about this work that Virginia Mason did, the work you just heard about, the work around lean management? Are you contemplating or are you pre-contemplating? Are you thinking about preparing? Are some of you taking action? And are some of you already doing it and maintaining it? So who's still kind of like, I don't know. I'm over here in pre-contemplation. I'm not sure how this might work for us. I don't really want to think about it. Brave souls, raise your hand. How about the contemplation folks? Thinking about it, thinking how it might apply? Yeah? Okay. Great. How about preparation? Are you already preparing, doing things related to this? A few? Okay. And action? Does that mean the rest of you guys are in action? Yeah. Kind of heavy in the throes. Okay, well that helps us get a sense of where we want to really focus today. And as customer focused and adding value, this session's really for you. So I want you to be able to ask questions of us. We're pretty candid about what worked and what didn't work. We're still early in our journey and have a long way to go, but we've learned a lot. We are sharing this information with the National Governance Association in November. And one of their big efforts in the NGA is taking all the states and thinking about an initiative around results first. And so they're trying to mirror some of this work that we're doing within Washington State. And so we'll be at part of their roundtable helping move this work forward. So when I started this work, it was with Governor Gregoire, who was our former governor, and she was known for her Government Management Accountability Program, which is called GMAP. Accolades, different kind of rewards and recognition from groups like Harvard, and a lot of national endorsement about the program, about accountability and transparency and performance. And when I came on board into her program, I had come from Virginia Mason, and I said, well, what about lean? What are we doing around lean management here? Are we looking at who's the customer of Washington State? And I said, well, let's try it out. Let's see what kind of response we get. So we met with about 400 of our executive leaders in an auditorium. We brought in people from Virginia Mason, Seattle Children's Hospital, Group Health, and Boeing, and had a conversation about what does this look like in a non-manufacturing industry. So Boeing manufacturing, 3 groups non-manufacturing, and looking at health services. And then we met that night with our senior leaders and said, what do you guys think? Do you think this is something we should be focused on? Is this something we want to be doing? And there was a strong group of willing and able folks that said, yes, let's march forward, let's look at this, let's learn what we can. We received 2 loan executives from Boeing who helped us on this journey. And we started meeting with leaders from the different agencies, the willing and able. And during that time, people got intrigued and interested about this work. We used a model area approach, so starting small in one area, building it out, and letting the employees sell this program itself. And so seeing some big wins with that, to the point where Governor Gregoire, when she knew she wasn't going to come back and be the next governor, said, I want velocity in this. I want you to create velocity so that when I leave, it has some sticking power. And so, as you heard previously about making sure the culture is retaining this and moving this work forward. And so during that time frame, we did create velocity. We went out to the private sectors and said, we need help. We don't do this kind of work regularly in state government. We've done bits and pieces on the journey. I mean, if you think about continuous improvement, the lineage goes way down into history. You can connect it to the 1400 Venetian shipbuilding practices if you want. So how does continuous improvement improve on itself over time? And here's this body of work that others are getting some great success with. And how might we leverage that and use that in state government? So we talked to private sector folks, and we had private sector folks be willing to stand and help us with this. Pro bono, we've been very fortunate. We've grown that, I'll mention it later, to 200 private sector organizations that are helping us on this journey in terms of coaching, mentoring, training, giving free presentations to our leadership. We have a conference in 2 weeks at the Tacoma Convention Center for 2,600 employees. There's no charge. It's a canned food drive, so they have to bring that for admittance. But we have keynote speakers, the governor's kicking off the session, and we have 63 breakout sessions over the course of 2 days for people to engage and learn more about this and share what's happening. And many of those presenters are private sector partners, so Alaska Airlines, Starbucks, again, a lot of the hospital administration groups within the state agencies. And so we've been really fortunate to have that. And so that would be one of my points as you think about this, reaching out. I know some of you do that in your communities, reach out to business partners and do a great job of that. We were really surprised, though, with the reaction that they were willing to help us and do it at no charge. And it's been really a great partnership for us. Them telling us what works and what doesn't work. It saved us a lot. One of the big things they said is don't start with training. They did that, and they had some really challenges, because when you do the work around lean and continuous improvement, it's about doing. And so if you can get those people to learn and do at the same time, that's where the big benefits are going to come in, and they can share that with others. So when Governor Gregoire left and we moved on to Governor Inslee, said, how do we take this to the next level? And so we said we can build on this, or we can start new. And he said, let's build on it. Let's see what we can do with the way the world's shaping, learn from our private sectors, and really grow and develop this. So we took performance management and we took lean management, and we said, what does that look like? And that became Results Washington, which is the program that we are currently implementing. We started with the very basic stuff, like one vision statement, one mission statement. Now this is an enterprise view across Washington State, looking at all the various different agencies within Washington State government. As superintendents, you also have all the different kinds of folks that report to you, right? So you might look at this from a case example. You might also look at it as how do you implement change in a way that crosses a broad structure like multiple schools, multiple agencies, and really try to make impact with that. So we started with a Working Washington built on education and innovation, knowing that that really needed to be the premise of the work that we do. And a mission statement about continuous improvement, job creation, preparing students for the future, and how do we do that in a way that values our environment, our people, and really the health that we've created within Washington State. We have some foundational commitments that you can see, and you have a copy of this that KayLyne will pass out, along with a map structure that we have. And we talked about what are our priority goals during this time frame. So if we're thinking about customers, what are the priority goals for state government? So came up with 5 goal areas. Looking at world-class education is number 1. Looking at number 2 is prosperous economy, the business angle, the energy and environment as the 3rd, healthy and safe communities, and then efficient, effective, and accountable government. How many of these impact education? All of them, pretty much? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So recognizing the interdependence that we have on all these 5 goal areas in achieving what we're trying to achieve.
That's just what I meant.
So you heard about the importance of having a system in place. Is this where I'm going to lose everybody now? They're going to focus on the maps? You can peek at the map for 5 seconds and then turn it over. We'll talk about the map in just a moment. So thinking about a system, putting a system in play. We kept it really simple. Our system is about measuring, it's about improving, it's about reporting, and it's about engaging. And so I just want to break those down for you briefly. So we started out with each of those 5 goal areas and said, if we're going to measure, what do we measure across Washington State government? And so when I talk about Washington State government, think of 53 agencies, boards, and commissions, everything from 11 different kinds of natural resource agencies, multiple education groups that go from pre-K to K-12 to advanced learning, high school, college, and beyond, and workforce skills, as well as healthcare areas, the Medicaid system, the DSHS system, or social services system, to other areas like licensing, liquor control. So 53 boards and commissions. We're talking about 60,000 employees, and if you throw the education system on top of that, about 120,000. 7 million Washingtonians, and we're looking at about a $34 billion budget with this entire work that we're doing. So when we looked at this, we said, lean management, quality improvement is about the customer. Who's our customer? And it was surprising what kind of answers we got. It wasn't that easy to define who our customer was. And so conversations ensued with things like, well, is it the Medicaid recipient or is it the taxpayer? Is it the prisoner or is it the community member? Is it the DSHS social services worker on CPS or is it that child? And so having those questions, I think the one that was probably most troubling for me is the 63-year-old woman who went in to get her license and wasn't happy as a customer because she needed glasses. She couldn't pass the eye test. Now, as a customer, was she happy? She absolutely wasn't. But if you're driving down I-5 next to her on the road, might you be happy? Perhaps. What was that?
If she's wearing it.
There she's wearing it. No. So really a challenging question about, when we talk about customer, who are we talking about? You know, you heard Henry talk last night about the physicians. When I worked at Virginia Mason, the physicians were really the customer. I mean, they were elite, they were great at what they did, and because of that, they got the best rooms around with the sunny windows, not the patients. They had their own cafeteria. It was a very different culture at that point in time. And so when we talk about customer, who is that customer and how do we serve that customer? And we know that we have incremental customers along the way, but ultimately, what are we doing to help the customer? And so we said, with these goal areas, and this is an example of goal 5, you actually have goal 1 on your table, which is education, but the outlay is the same. So we said, in terms of government, what do most people want? Well, they want a culture that drives accountability and results. And if we talk about that, what do we think that looks like? So we came up with goal topics that said, it's about customer satisfaction and confidence. I'm being served well, irrespective of where I am. Taxpayer, resource stewardship, my money is being used responsible. And transparency and accountability, I know where my money is being spent. And so if those are the things that people care about, we created some subtopics and some outcome measures and leading indicators to relate to that. Now, keep in mind that we set up a structure for each of these goal areas that is owned by those 53 agency boards and commissions. So there is a goal council that owns this map. There's a goal council that owns the education map, similar to the environment and energy map. And we assign leads to each of the measures. So in simple terms, the outcome measures, the orange ones, were our longer term measures. I think the longest term measure we have is decreasing traffic fatalities to 0 by 2030. So we're at 400 and some traffic fatalities per year right now on the roads, and we're going to get to 0 by 2030. The leading indicators below are the shorter term ones. Those are the ones that we want to have the conversations about to say, are we making progress towards those outcome measures? Are we making achievements? And this is really hard for us because in state government, sometimes we like to think about what can we control. And when we think about what we control and what we can measure, we tend to find that customers don't care about that. They don't care about the kind of small stuff happening in the back office. They don't really care about maybe how many programs or services have been offered in particular areas. They want the results. They want results and they want to see things they care about. So we set these goal maps up for each of the goal councils who meet monthly to work on this work and think about how do we make improvements in these particular areas. So with the education system, I know Governor Gregoire at one point said, I finally figured out why I'm not making progress in education. It's because I don't have a system. So in our state, the K-12 system is separately elected, right? Anybody else have that similarity in your state? Different bodies of government working on it, yeah.
But everyone.
Yeah, yeah. So we said if we're looking at the system of education, we really need to think about kindergarten readiness with our early learning programs, K-12 system, looking at the 3 areas within that: post-secondary enrollment with our technical and community colleges, post-secondary degree completion with higher ed, and our workforce training pieces. And so how do we bring those people to the table to have conversations about a system putting in place that will sustain over time and allow us to make investments in each of these areas that will help align the strategies to a place where we're going to get the results that we need.
Go back to that slide. One issue there is that you're combining 2 systems with completely different values undergirding them. So I mean, this is shorthand, and you might want to argue with it. But
I'd love to argue with you.
in K-12, the value is having as many students as possible succeed. Now I'm going to exaggerate this slightly, but I've worked for a long time in higher education. And the value in higher education is keeping as many kids out of the system as you can, so that you can take credit for the smart kids that you admit. So there's a completely different value structure at work in those 2 systems. That's going to be a hard thing to combine.
Yeah, and I think that's a great comment, Harvey, in terms of, what are the values that underline these pieces? And when we're talking about sitting at the table, it's not always an easy conversation.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
The education group is great compared to the economic group. Let me just say that. But there's still, and KayLyne runs this group, so you'll hear from her in a moment. Yeah, I mean, there is that competing short-term reality of where people need to go. And so trying to get them to buy into that bigger vision and work together collaboratively, breaking down those silos is tough. And that's work that we're doing. So a caveat, I should say, we've been doing this about a year. We rolled this out in September of last year. And we have done some great work, and we have a lot of work to do still. So everything I say, I want you to keep that thinking that we've got a long ways still to go with this. Another example, building bridges. So you mentioned within the education system, what about the social services system? What about the health systems? And how do they impact the education pieces? And very critical. And so this is an example where we're taking all 5 of our goals and bringing them together to have a conversation with the governor about decreasing percentage of 10th graders who smoke marijuana in the past 30 days. This is just an example of something we looked at 3 weeks ago. And we brought goal metrics from each of the areas that talked about the work that we need to be doing in this particular area. And it was a great example of the impact and the collaboration that needs to happen with our health department, our social services department from a substance abuse perspective, our agriculture system from some of the work they do around food and nutrition within the school systems. It really brought the whole group together to talk about how do we impact this particular area and look at it across multiple goal areas.
Can you back up to that slide just 1 second? Just
Yep.
out of curiosity. With all of the conversations surrounding that, understanding how the 5 goals come together, and understand the interest, right? So
Yes.
I don't have any control of that. It seems like there's other overlays particular to this social prohibition, non-prohibition relative to 10th graders shouldn't be smoking marijuana anyway. The law didn't provide them to smoke marijuana. The change of the law didn't take place. And then are there overlays of, is there decrease in violence in communities because it's not available? Is there a decrease in, is there an increase in dollars generated from taxation that is now getting funneled back in? And if so, does that get wrapped in this goal process or some other goal process?
So one example I think that might lead to that is when we passed the marijuana laws, the funding streams were appropriated across different areas. At this session that we had, Department of Health is the preventative strategy piece. So they're trying to think of what are the messages to impact students to not smoke marijuana. And you know, the data that's coming back is they're seeing it as it's okay. It's not as bad as smoking or drugs, right? Because it's now legal in our state. And so we're sending that message about it being legal. Department of Health has to put together this whole package on messages that will help with this population, but the appropriation funding isn't coming in until next fall. And so one of the things that came out of that was we need to focus on a supplemental budget package that gives some of that tax money over to the Department of Health. Is that hitting what you're, yeah. So those are the kind of conversations that we're trying to have. And we used to have conversations pretty much about just the data itself. You know, let's talk about this data piece. And what we're finding is the value is having the conversations across the continuum of the health, the education, the economic, all of those groups coming together to have those strategy discussions, and how do we focus on strategies and actions that are going to make a difference. So let's get some money to health to be able to start that progress and get some of this messaging out before it gets too late. Yeah.
Is the Healthy Youth Survey the metric for that?
Say, what's that?
Is the Healthy Youth Survey the metric for?
Yes, I believe so, through, yeah, the 10th grade. Yeah. Yeah. And as a 10th grader, this was a very interest to myself. I have a 10th grade daughter, I should say. Okay. So just a quick note about the improvement cycle we've been on. So learning from our past, you know, we used a lot of the similar things. Again, my comment about continuous improvement and continuous improvement. We aren't stuck on it has to be one way. We're stuck on what do the disciplines across all the areas bring together in the field that allow us to create a way that works for Washington State. So what you're hearing is much like Toyota would say, don't follow us, go do your own thing. Here's what we learned. That's what we're saying today is, do your own thing, but here's what we're learning along the journey. And we're getting some great successes from it. In terms of customer value, I mentioned, you know, we usually want to measure down here, kind of the easy stuff. And the governor really said, no, we're going to go for the big stuff. Let's look at poverty. Let's look at, you know, high school graduation rates. Let's look at gross business income of target sectors in Washington State. Do we have control of that? Absolutely not. And so what do we have to do? We have to work with people. We have to work with stakeholders, partners, business people like yourselves to help us do this in a way that makes sense. And we've been doing that along the way and getting some great information. This is just an example of when we thought about the measures, we did use logic models. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it's that simple question of why are you doing what you're doing? You're doing, so one of the examples is looking at prison recidivism. You know, the prisoners reoffend, and do they go back to jail within a 3-year window? So we could sit here and say, oh, look at the number of classes we taught. You know, we taught some great skills for the prisoners, and we're really excited. Why do we do that? We did that so that they'll have a marketable skill, so that they'll have employment upon release, we'll have less crime. And what do the customers really care about on that continuum?
Less crime.
Yeah, they're like way up here, right? So as government, we could sit down here and do our thing and say, look at all our data. Isn't this great? We want to have measures along the way, but we also know that we've got to shoot for the stuff that's going to be hard, and that's going to take partnerships to do that. When we talk about improving, we're talking about lean thinking, and what I appreciate about this is it's everybody in the organization. We're not there yet, but we've made some headway. We're constantly asking similar questions to what you heard. What problem are we trying to solve? What's the root cause of that problem? What's the improvement plan and the strategies that we're focusing on with that? When people look at our maps, I was at the National Policy Forum out in DC in June, and some people looked at our maps and said, oh my gosh, how do you know these are all the right leading indicators? You know, this is a lot of work. And I said, we don't. We don't. We're trying to use lean thinking. We're trying to problem solve. We're peeling back the onion. The minute we find out something's different, we're going to course correct. So we're trying to fail quickly and fast in a way that allows us to be successful. And that is really hard. We're still working on that. With our root cause analysis, in some cases we have great medical evidence-based stuff, right? In other cases, we might have longitudinal studies, random sampling. We've got state studies on different areas. In some cases, we don't have the answers. So we're going to show, KayLyne did some work with the education group on some tools around problem solving and looking at root cause. And that's one example where, again, peeling that onion and trying to figure out what works when we don't have the evidence necessarily to what's a leading practice. Within our culture, I mentioned, you know, we're trying to go top down, bottom up. Top down from here's the vision, the mission, the 5 goals. And bottom up, we're asking everybody to join in this journey. Culturally, we're asking you to think about how do you make improvements at your desk, or as you're meeting with that customer, or you're at the Department of Licensing doing the work. And so we're trying to spread this through the 5 goal councils, our deputy directors, a lot of different groups. I mentioned the conference. I mentioned this private sector partnership program. I lied. I said 200, 192. I think that's updated because Daryl got a couple just the other day. But again, helping us on this journey. We instituted a fellowship program where we have fellows join the governor's office for a year from different agencies, and they're assigned to different specific projects that the governor really cares about. And so one example is the graduation rates project. And so we have a fellow assigned specifically to help do that work with the different partners. Another area is looking at the Puget Sound and shellfish. We have the 10th grade marijuana issue. That's one of the ones that we're focusing on. And so we're bringing in people to help really lead this work and champion this work and bring the groups together to have the conversations so that we can align strategies. And so that's a critical piece. And then we started a community of practice where we have 50 agency advisors, 700 agency practitioners that are on this journey in terms of tools and skill sets, recognizing that we're asking everybody to do it. I will say a win for me, one win, was we got asked to go to the Federation, it's our union here in Washington State, one of our large unions, to talk about what we're doing with Results Washington. And as we walked in, they had stickers everybody was wearing that said, "We are Goal 5." And Goal 5 is efficient, effective, accountable government. And I went, oh, this is fabulous. And they talked about the Goal 5. And I'm like, you are Goal 5. And you know, trying to emphasize, I think as you said, it's not our program, it's everybody's program. It's about how do we all work together collaboratively to get these results. And so those are some of the things that we're seeing, which is really, really important. Reporting, a key element of this. We meet with the governor monthly. We have a results room. You can't probably see him very well. He's the taller one in the middle. And we talk about the work that we're doing in particular areas. We try to have dialogue and not just sharing information out to the governor. And we monitor that. So our last 2-hour session, 40% of the time was spent on him asking questions or having dialogue across the table about a particular area. And so that's where we find the rich value. That's where we had that discussion about Department of Health needs funding to get this preventative messaging out, or we're going to have to wait a whole year, and what's the impact of that? And so having these conversations where they're very specific on, we still have the data elements. We show, here's the outcome measure, here's the leading indicator, here's the target, here's the actual that we're at in terms of making progress. Here are the strategies we're employing, and here's the actions that we're taking. And it's that strategy action discussion that's the richest. That's where we're having the really meaty conversations about who else do we need at the table to have those conversations. This is just one simple dashboard. If you go to our website, you'll see this is for healthy youth and adult needs improvement. The details are behind it. You can drill down and see all the details, the data displays, the charts. And that's available on our website. The other piece on the Results Washington with the governor, it's televised. So you can watch it real time on TVW. Anybody here watch TVW? That's from Washington State.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What do the numbers mean there, Wendy?
Yeah, so this one is looking at healthy youth and adults, for example, and there's a set target for that particular measure. And it's saying that we're at 16% right now, which means we're not meeting our target.
It says percent, I couldn't see that.
And so it says need improvement down here, but then you go into the detail and you can see more of the detail. Now, one of the areas that we are struggling with across all these areas is the disproportionate populations and the kind of underserved and the special needs areas. You're seeing that across the board. And we don't have an answer for that, but we're working on it and we're asking those questions. And KayLyne can share a little bit more about that as well. But when you go into some of these, you'll see, you know, different populations, race, ethnicity issues that we need to be focusing on to help move the target. And the governor's very good about not wanting peanut butter spread. He wants, you know, we can target it to make a difference, in a particular area, that's where he wants us to be focusing. We also have a website that if you want to go to, and we're starting to show our accomplishments with sort of a click, speeding up child abuse investigation permits, cutting cost of x-rays, saving employees $1.7 million a year. We're not good at sharing this stuff yet, and we're trying to figure out a way to do it in a way that makes sense. But we're trying to get that message out about some of the good stuff that's happening. And then the engagement piece I mentioned, we talked to internally with our folks, externally with some folks, and then partners. When we put these maps together, it was our best guess, and then we put it out to stakeholder groups and said, what do you think? Do we have the right thing? Are we measuring what you value as a Washingtonian? And so we got lots of feedback from folks. One example is C-section rates was a measure, and the medical profession said, great, love it, you're measuring it all wrong. Here's how you need to measure it. So we're able to change the map in a way that had integrity and made sense and was supported by the medical profession. So those are some of the pieces we've done. We also, when we rolled this out, did a Twitter town hall, some crowdsourcing with this, and let people go online and vote. What do you think is most important? What are we missing with this piece? So this is where we landed as of about a year ago after we did some of that work. And then it's about continuing to meet with the stakeholder groups and how do we make sure they're partnering with us on this work. Time-wise, I know we're running short, so I might just give a note to this really quickly and say that when we look at this work, a lot of times people think it's about just process improvement. And they'll say, oh, I get that, it's process improvement. You know, a tool to decrease permitting time. Or making sure that we're ridding waste in the system, which is absolutely important and absolutely valuable. We are looking at it, though, from a cultural perspective. And so we're saying, what is our value-driven purpose? Our vision, our mission, the 5 goal areas. Now, what's nice about this model, you could think about it at a macro level, and you could take it at a micro level. And there's many steps in between, right? So from a superintendent perspective, I'm thinking there could be an entire school district, there could be a school-specific version, there could be a teacher-specific version, and so on. You could take it up and down the scale. But what we're saying is that of our 53 agencies, boards, and commissions, we want you to be working in this area. Be really clear about your value-driven purpose that aligns with the work we're doing within Results Washington. Make process improvements, and this is specifically aligned together, people development. How do you develop the capacity of the people? I know for a while we used to say, it's not about the people, it's about the process. And it is about the people, right? It's about the people capacity. It's about the people who are doing the work, and how do we grow and develop each other in a way that makes sense so that we can have the skill sets that solve the problems, not just for today, but the problems of tomorrow. Because we don't know what those problems are. But if we have the skill set and the thinking around it, we'll be able to focus on those. And then what are the leadership behaviors and management systems we need to be focusing on to help make this work? Where are we misaligned? Where we're not rewarding behavior, if people are being creative and trying things, and then they fail. And what kind of repercussions do they have? We want to reward that. We want to encourage that. And ultimately, the culture and the mindset is where we're focusing. How do we get everybody in state government to be working with citizens, Washingtonians, about the work we do in a way that makes it better? Ridding waste, adding value, leader as coach, employee as problem solver. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to KayLyne, who's going to drill a little bit more specifically in some of the collaborative work with education and trying to talk fast.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I am fairly new to education. It's been about a year, I think, that I've been in it. So I just jumped in, and it is just a whole new world. It's just like, oh my word, there's so much to learn and so many reports I need to read.
You know, it was easy before.
And so it's been fascinating, and I have really enjoyed this journey of my own. When we developed the map, I really appreciated the comment about the kind of the segmented areas of education. One of the things that has united us is this whole effort around STEM. and the workforce calling out for we need qualified workers. And that's something that our goal council comes together to talk about frequently. You'll see on the map who belongs to my goal council. It's the heads of the agencies responsible for education. For the first time, we have the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction at our table, so we're actually able to collaborate and say, how do we improve this? It's easy for us to identify the customer in education, where some of the other goal councils may have a little bit of a harder time, but for us, it's the student. What do the students need? What is the student going to receive the most value from what we're providing? Gene Sherritt is the head of our goal council, and he's also the executive director for the Washington Student Achievement Council, who is looking at the continuum. So it makes perfect sense that he's the leader of this goal council, and he and I partner together on leading this effort. So the beginning of the year, January, the governor identified graduation rates as a priority for him. So Results Washington joined forces with OSPI to collaborate on, okay, we need to increase some graduation rates. How are we going to do this? They had been working for not quite a year on a collective impact effort called GATE, Graduation and Team Effort. And so when we came into them, it was kind of a perfect marriage of, okay, now we have the governor's office saying this is important. So that means DSHS, our Social and Health Services, our Department of Health, our Employment Securities, all of the agencies under the governor's purview, can also be kind of commissioned to help with this effort. So leveraging all of the people that come together at the table to talk about, what are the strategies and what are the things that we can do. So we just joined forces with the effort that was already currently in process. So we use this model. What is our objective? We need to figure out how to increase graduation rates. So we created this internal work group to identify, okay, what are the steps we need to take. We went out in September. Was it September we did? And October, November of last year. Went to a lot of the educational service districts throughout the state, met with superintendents for those districts. We also went into a lot of the high schools, spoke with the principals, spoke with some of the guidance counselors, spoke with even some teachers, to identify the root cause. Why is it that kids aren't graduating? What is the issue? We heard very common themes throughout the state, which I'm sure all of you will resonate with, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And then we created a plan using the A3 tool. How many in here have heard of the A3 thinking or the A3 tool in Lean? So I'm going to let you know a little secret. A3, all it means is the size of the paper. It's an 11 by 17 paper. Anybody in the printing industry would know that A3 is the size of the paper. So everybody was like, what's this A3 tool? We got to get our hands on this A3 tool. Here it is, a blank white piece of paper, 11 by 17. Knock yourself out. And what it is just a way to just tell a story on one sheet of paper and to include a whole bunch of very comprehensive information. And disciplining yourself to think about putting it all on one page is very difficult. Because as you know, there's a lot to this story of how do we increase graduation rates, why aren't kids graduating? So trying to then hone it down was very challenging. But we did it, and here it is. It has the different components of an A3 improvement plan: background, current conditions, the target, the goal. You do some analysis, you develop some countermeasures and an action plan, and then you do a follow-up. Really simple, common sense, and extremely difficult. Again, once you try to then determine, okay, what are all the things we're going to do with this? So I'm just going to touch on a few of the pieces of this A3 plan, kind of highlight just a few. One, our current condition is our graduation rates have remained stagnant. We've been hanging out somewhere around the mid-70s as a state. We know improvement efforts have gone up. There's some schools that have done incredible things, to increase the graduation rate, and yet we're still kind of stagnant as a state. We did a root cause analysis based on the information we got from the superintendents. Our themes that came out of that was data. We have an issue with data. Schools have so much data they don't know what to do with. They have to submit so much data, they don't know how to analyze the data, they don't know how to use the data for daily management to the students, or they just don't have systems in place. They're doing data with paper and pen to kind of determine who's here today in school and who's not. Schools have their own set of challenges. There's competing priorities. They have resource issues. We have students that are disengaging. So social emotional issues was a huge thing that came out. Mental health issues, behavioral, academic, we heard that clearly throughout. And then this whole thing around support systems and improvements. Engagement is a huge piece. Family engagement. How do you engage the community? How do you engage the student? How do the teachers as adults, stay engaged? When they're, frustrated or worn out or, having more things always thrown at them. So our countermeasures and action plan that we developed took those 4 big buckets of information. And again, we decided let's leverage the GATE work that has already been going on here. You'll see that we had some committees. So we already had a GATE data committee. So we just tasked this committee with, go fix this. The statewide MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, tier 1, 2, 3. We needed to develop a multi-tiered system of support for the state. A lot of schools were using that model already. And so we said, let's create a work group around that. And then we determined to have an engagement committee. That was kind of a new committee we hadn't developed before. Interestingly enough, in this effort, OSPI gathered people from inside of the state agency. When they said, we're going to gather together on engagement, everybody wanted to participate, didn't know the person right next to them was working on the same engagement issue. And when they came together, they're like, how do you define engagement? It's all over the board. There's like not one standard of engagement, and so you're seeing all of this breaking down of the silos and the collaboration between not only inside of agencies, and this Results Washington has done this work, but also cross-agency collaboration. Let's have one identification for engagement. Let's have one way that we measure these results. Superintendent Dorn has aligned a lot of his priorities and goals to our goal map that we've determined. The Washington Student Achievement Council developed a 10-year roadmap, aligned to these goals as well. So we're seeing that alignment, and as Wendy said, we still have a long way to go. So if we put this into PDCA thinking, which is definitely something that we use a lot, plan, do, check, act. If you look at the A3 document and you overlay, this you can't see very well. This is basically the plan, right? Mm-hmm. This is the do part. Mm-hmm. We're going to check it, and then we're going to act, or sometimes you'll see PDCA, we're going to adjust. So we're going to try something. We're going to, implement this plan. We're going to measure it and see did it work, and then if not, we're going to circle back and adjust. State government, our state government at least, I'm sure your other ones are doing it very, very well. Our state government hangs out in the plan and the do. We plan, then we do, and then we plan, then we do, plan, do, plan, do, plan, do. We don't bother to then go check, well, did it work? And what can we adjust now? And so Results Washington has really been, let's build on the best of the best. Let's build on the efforts that have worked in the past. Let's continuously improve, continuous improvement, and constantly keep going through that cycle.
Thank you both. A wonderful presentation.